Well, our God cares about what is right and what is just in the world. We see that particularly in our first reading today, where Nathan the prophet goes to confront David on what is not right and what is not just in the world. He's very wise. He does it kind of this, backdoor way where he tells a story about the shepherd and there's a couple sheep owners over here, and doesn't do it directly because his life might be on the line. It's that kind of third-person storytelling that has quite a long history. I mean, David's way back. Jesus used it as well, too. He told a third-person story, if you will, about the leaders of his day that they had to listen in on. And others down through history have used that as well. One of my favorites comes from George Orwell, and he wrote the story of Animal Farm. In his story of Animal Farm, he's really poking at the communist leaders of the day and some of the shenanigans they were trying to pull. Anyway, the story goes that on this farm that the animals all could think and speak like humans could. But the humans were in charge. And the humans resented them being in charge. I mean, the farm animals resented the humans being in charge. And so the pigs led a revolt. Their slogan was, "All animals are equal." And they went around and they gathered the animals and they ran to the house where the people are and they chased them out. Well, as you might guess, the animals now all of a sudden had the farm, but they didn't have much of a plan. And one of the pigs noticed the power vacuum and decided he would fill it. His name was Napoleon. Good name for someone who wants to fill a power vacuum. And Napoleon does what a lot of politicians are doing, huh? So anyone that might be competition, he puts a smear campaign out on those guys, some other pigs that were popular and such. And he puffs himself up even larger than he ever was and made himself look really good. And his plan worked. He got the power. So he led a contingent of him and his cronies in to take over the farmhouse. And he changes the slogan to "All animals are equal" to "Some animals are more equal than others." More equal. I always love that line. More equal than others. And the last, just to show his how power goes bad, is that one of the first things that happens is a horse that helped in the rebellion, a faithful horse, beloved, was having health issues. And what Napoleon promises to do is get him to the veterinarian. Instead, when he ships him off, what they didn't know is that he sent him to the glue factory. And he kept the money. And he bought whiskey with it. And he and his cronies are partying in the house on the money from the faithful horse. Oh, power does it, doesn't it? It's a huge issue out there. It's a huge issue in our lives as individuals. Power gets us to think we're above things, that we're more equal, that somehow we have rights we don't, and you see this unfolding in David's life. He started out as a shepherd boy himself, and he built his career up, and where we have him in the beginning of the story today as the peak of his power. He has just gone through and won one victory after another. The Amorites, the Ammonites, all these ites, he's defeated them all. Every Philistines, the Canaanites, every enemy of Israel, he has won repeated battle after battle after battle. In fact, one king just came in and brought his gold and silver and laid it at David's feet. Didn't want to wait for the war. He is riding high. He's captured the country that owned Jerusalem and made it his capital. Things are rolling. He's on top of his game. In fact, he's on top of his palace looking out, and he sees the beautiful Bathsheba. And he says, "I want her," and has his messengers. I always thought that funny. Messenger in the Bible is the word for angel, right? So anyway, has his messengers go fetch her for him. He has his adultery, sends her home. It seems like water under the bridge. Maybe he's getting away with this, but she's pregnant. Big problem. After a few other shenanigans, finally he tells his top general to put him out in front of the battle, a badly planned battle where he'll surely be killed, and he was. And then he takes Bathsheba as his wife. God who cares about righteousness and justice in the world. God who's raised David up. God who's given him the commandments. God who has loved him sends the prophet to confront him. And of course, he doesn't do it directly. He tells the story of two people in a city where one's poor and just has one little lamb, just sucking you in. You can feel it, Beloved little lamb, raised it at this table, loved like a daughter, kind of this pet image almost. And the other bad, rich neighbor who has flocks to cover hillsides can't spare one of his own lambs or sheep for his guests, but kills the neighbor's lamb and feeds him with that. Crazy, huh? And David just blows. He was a shepherd. He says, how could you do this? The man deserves to die. He needs to pay him back fourfold. And, of course, Nathan pulls the line, you're the man. That's you. That's how you have become. And he goes on to say, hey, the sword that you brought to Uriah and to this whole thing is going to enter your house. There's going to be death and conflict from it. You're going to have earthly consequences. But I'll walk with you. I will stay with you, David. Still stay with you. Well, as I think about this whole thing for today, obviously, the first thing I hear in this story is our own need to keep our secrets. How hard we try to keep things hidden. Whether you're a criminal in the mob or a gang, you're sworn to secrecy, aren't you? You got to keep the stuff hidden. And so we send our police, we hire police and detectives, we have forensic teams and courts to kind of uncover it so that justice might be and righteousness in this earth. And we in our politics, religious leaders, you name all these different things. We've seen a whole slew of things that we've tried to keep secret. Some of it the press has brought out, and some of the other things we like our secrets, and the truth of it is we like our secrets too, don't we? We have secrets in our family. I bet almost every family out there has a couple secrets. Maybe you don't even know it, but I bet it's there. There's some secrets that nobody wants to lay bare because it's hard to own it. It's hard to let that truth come out and live with it, and so we want it all buried down and plastered over and hope it just goes away. And we can hear Jesus in the background going, what you think is hidden will be revealed. What you think you did in the dark will be in the light. What you think, is whispered will be shouted from the rooftops. And the prophet Nathan is living that out, isn't he? He's saying, no, there's to be justice and righteousness in this earth. Struggle for us today is a lot of the stuff we see on the press, we see in the newspapers, and there's accusations and counter-accusations, and we're just getting so swirled and spun up, it's hard to know what the truth is, to know what justice and righteousness is in our days. We've had a lot of it lately, and it's still unfolding for us even in this moment, new situations, and going, well, did that really happen? Did this happen over here? And we have our biases that may get us leaning one way or the other, and we're kind of tearing our hair out, and I think what happens, and a danger of what can happen to us is we give up too easy. Say, well, I can't know, so forget it. But that isn't righteousness and justice in the earth, is it? It's not. So what should we do? God's people. Well, I'm going to give some suggestions, some things for you to consider today. And the first thing I want to say is, as one of the scriptures famously notes, the judgment begins in the house of the Lord. Jesus said something very similar, saying, don't try to, take the speck out of someone else's eye when you got a log in your own eye. Let's begin here with our own lives, in our own place. And we do that. We try to do that. We start with a confession. We've joined in David's psalm, Psalm 51, which is associated with this very act of his murder and adultery. And we say, we've done evil in your sight, we've gone wrong, we need to be washed and made pure, we need a clean heart and a willing spirit, O God. We sing hymns that bring us in to say, yes, me too. But that doesn't mean we don't look out in the world and say, hold it. It's not all well out there. There is injustice and righteousness, and people are paying the price. These aren't like neutral things. It's costing people. People have had huge burdens put on them, and they're struggling, and they're trying to find their way. So we just can't just then say, oh, throw our hands up. In our baptismal promises, we say that we will work for justice and peace in all the world. It's a pretty big promise. And the word I want to highlight there is work. These things don't come easily and aren't just anything that's landing in your lap, you might want to be a little suspicious of, indeed. But there's a work to doing some due diligence in our own little pursuits and our own investigations to try to get some to the truth of the matter so that we can know what justice and righteousness might look like in this world. So in the midst of the accusations, counter-accusations, and all the spinning that goes on in our world, there is a burden on us with that. And I want to pick up in a particular one that's coming our way. We are citizens of a democracy that puts a lot of this stuff on our shoulders. And not just with candidates, but for us, particularly in Colorado, we have a bunch of issues on our ballot. And we got the ballots. I don't know about you, but I got ballots sitting on my countertop. And I know some of those issues. They're dealing with, issues of constitution, with slavery, with loans, with all these kinds of issues. Oil, how that's working out in this. All these issues. And we need to do some due diligence. Maybe we won't figure it out. In fact, I know there's some things that will be just too far away, too hard to figure out. But we do our due diligence so that there might be more justice and righteousness and less people being crushed and run over by people in power who aren't thinking too clearly, who are more worried about getting away with or hiding secrets or whatever else. We do our due diligence. And the final thing, David had to pay with earthly consequences. He didn't get a clean slate. But God said, I will go with you in this mess that you have created. I will walk with you and I will move forward with you. You're still my David. A murderer, an adulterer. I don't know if we give him that much room in our society today. I doubt we would. But God says, I'm going to go with you and I will still be a part of your life. Another psalm, David says, God's anger lasts for a moment, but his favor lasts for a lifetime. If we own up, when I think Jesus is shouting secrets from the housetops and all that whole thing, it isn't just to, make us grovel in shame and hate ourselves all the days of our lives. That is a setup so that we might know grace. If it's going to be pulled up and shown up there, it's bringing us around to realize here's where God's grace does come. That we might know there's mercy for us and even mercy for some people we would rather not see get mercy. God's favor lasts, God's anger lasts for a moment, but his favor lasts for a lifetime. That we might know that this isn't, again, just to irritate and make us all feel terrible, but to move us to know grace and to trust in God, to join with David, that we might own our evil, know we need cleansing, and find our way to a clean heart and a right spirit. Favor for a lifetime. Amen.